This episode contains explicit language. If you have kids around, we'd suggest using headphones, or if you don't like that language yourself, this may be an episode to skip. We've decided to keep it in because, frankly, it's how we talk.
Welcome to the Real Chili Podcast.
And the Golden Eagles of Marquette University in Milwaukee are bound for the Final Four for only the third time ever.
5 seconds left. Marquette down by one, trying to avoid the upset. Blue the drive, the left hand. It's good. 1 second to play. Vander Blue has put Marquette in front by one.
And I want to win every day as basketball players, as students, and I want to win every day, most importantly, as people.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Chili Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lavender. I'm joined by Eric Pond and Pete Mohan. And fellas, I don't care if they're up or if they're down. I don't care if it's in Milwaukee or Madison. It always feels good to beat the Badgers, and it feels that much better when we do it in Madison and we bludgeon them. This is going to be a fun pod.
We took them in the darkest back alley of Madison, which admittedly is pretty light, and beat the crap out of them with urban fists.
I think this being the 100th anniversary of the MU-UW game, we can make the argument that it was the most important MU-UW game, and we won it. So big props, 100th anniversary. I think we're now within 10 wins of tying the series, so let's just win the next 10, fellas.
The line on this game was, I think it opened at Marquette +6, moved to Marquette +7. That made no sense to me. I don't know what the hell was going on there. I actually didn't end up putting money down. I don't know if you fellas did, but I saw a lot of Twitter action saying this is a no-brainer, and it turned out to be the case, and then some. Marquette won 82-63. Marquette put up 41 points in the first and in the second half. We shot 52% from the field, 63% from the three-point line, and we did not miss a single free throw. We only got to the line 10 times, but didn't miss a single free throw. A terrific offensive performance, and on the flip side of that, our defense wasn't tested because Wisconsin only has a couple of weapons and really just one in Ethan Happ. So there wasn't a lot of pressure on the Marquette defense. Eric, I want to throw it to you. What did you see is a key to this game for Marquette?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to point to really the nation's best backcourt and the shooting numbers we were able to put up. That was just absolutely enormous for us. I think we'd be sort of remiss if we didn't mention that UW is a little shorthanded, missing a few of their players, including, I think, their starting point guard. But Howard in the first, Rousey in the second. That is like the full story of this game to me. Mm-hmm. Howard was completely absurd. Potentially, I think he peaked in the first when Rousey came back into the game after dropping the double technical. The crowd went bananas at UW, probably hyped up on some Miller Lights there. And Howard drained a long three and then turned around, put his finger over his mouth, and shushed the crowd. Just completely awesome. And then Rousey balanced it out with an equally great second half. So that's what it felt like to me, fellas.
I don't know. It was pretty embarrassing performance by Howard. He was the only player on the team to not shoot over 50% from three.
Oh,
yeah, they're going to give him shit for that.
Loser. Yeah, no, I mean, the team shot lights out and couldn't be bothered. You know, we heard going into this game and saw from Ken Palm's statistics how impressive this Badgers defense was supposed to be. Man, we were all so scared. And then we came in there and just put on a clinic. Yeah. This is how you play offense. And that's a good sign because we've been talking about, hey, Marquette's offense looks really good, looks in rhythm. They look like they're ready to enter the Big East season on offense. And they're going to be tested by a pretty decent Wisconsin defense, and they didn't look bothered in the slightest. So I think that this bodes well for our ability to consistently play good offense against decent defensive teams in the Big East season.
Really, since we had that loss, since Marquette lost to Georgia, what was that? That was a week ago today. So on Saturday, December 2nd, when Georgia came to Milwaukee, Marquette lost 73-66. Marquette's offense didn't look great in that game. Since then, against Vermont and again against Wisconsin, Marquette has, in my impression, been able to be just a little bit more than just Howard and Rousey dribbling on the perimeter and firing up threes. I think Wojo has been able to drive home that there are other ways to get Sam Hauser involved. I would still like Sam Hauser to be a little bit more on the offensive end. Mohan, you made a great point about that the other day. But Howard and Rousey keeping an eye out for Helt, who Helt has been impressive on the pick and roll. He's been able to get, in this game against Wisconsin, Helt finished with he was 4 of 5 from the field, 8 points. Showed some nice finishes around the rim. So I like the way our
Two good beats.
I like the way our offense is clicking. Admittedly against a shorthanded Wisconsin team, but we're clicking in a way that we weren't early in the season, even in Maui when we had a couple of decent wins.
I think that this has been a pretty successful non-conference so far. I mean, we've got W's against the Cupcakes. We took 2 out of 3 in Maui, and in this stretch, we took 2 out of 3 games, which I think is what we had to do to stay afloat. Yeah. I don't think that when it comes tournament time and people are looking at our resume, they're going to be like, oh, they really faltered through that stretch. They're not going to be like, oh man, Marquette really killed it and knocked off the best teams either. But I don't think that there's anything to be ashamed of the way that Marquette's performed thus far in the non-conference.
I feel like leaving this game, we have to conclude that it was a successful non-conference slate. The thing I wanted to call out and throw out there for discussion is, signs of perhaps great prep and great coaching by Wojo and the staff, what seemed like to me anyway. I mean, they looked really great to start the game. They were smooth on offense, nice drives to the basket. It helped that they went 7 of 8 from the three-point line. But Rousey redeeming himself in the second half. A lot of that's Rousey and the chip that he puts on his shoulder and the skill that he has. But perhaps that's more a response as well to good coaching by Wojo and motivation by Wojo at the half. All in all, it felt like they were well prepared. They really came out of the gate strong, and they did what they needed to do on the back end of the game to be successful.
I totally agree. I mean, clearly this is a Wisconsin team that is down this year, but going into the Kohl Center is never a really easy thing. And so the fact that Wojo had him ready to go right out of the gate was impressive. We didn't post a pregame pod, and again, we've been busy with the holidays, but we're happy to be back with this one. So we didn't get a chance to do a pregame one. But one of the things we talked about kind of amongst ourselves was the key to defeating Wisconsin in this game, in addition to good offense, was just stopping Hap. And if that is their go-to guy, that is their number 4 player according to Ken Pom in the country, we need to stop him. You saw us double team him a lot. I think Helt did a pretty solid job on Ethan Happ. Now I think some of this is tinged by the fact that this year Happ is in a different position where he is not the only, he's the primary offensive option, especially with Demetric Trice out, and Happ just couldn't handle that level of attention from the Marquette defense, which is admittedly soft, but I think still the fact that Happ was the only option allowed us to totally key in on him, and he just couldn't perform. We were able to put enough bodies on him.
Well, the other guy that did a little something for them was this guy, Brad Davidson, who was pissing me off throughout the whole game. That he got. How does this guy get 16 free throw attempts and the Marquette team gets 10 as a whole team? I mean,
yeah.
Come on, refs. Don't give this guy a break. He doesn't need help. He's a wannabe. And I think that if he was smart, he would start getting that resume prepared for Enterprise because he's going pro in something other than sports. But, hey, good game anyway, Brad Davidson. Cool. Hope you enjoyed that L, bro.
So for those that weren't able to watch the game or don't have that name recognition, Brad Davidson was the freshman for Wisconsin, 6'3", number 34. He had the shoulder sleeve on, the black shoulder sleeve on, and he really was a lot of the driver of their offense. He ended up with 20 points, 4 assists, and 3 rebounds. So he had a pretty decent showing and got into it a little bit with Rousey early on. But I agree that it's clearly someone, he's a Wisconsin player we're going to have to contend with for the next few years. Eric, what'd you think of Davison?
Yeah, if there's one downside to this game, it's that we can see that Brad Davidson is going to be a thorn in the side of Marquette for the next 3 years. This Brad Davidson motherfucker, I don't even know. Something about him is just infuriating to watch. He's the ultimate go to the college club every night, fuel up with booze and meat at State Street Brats before every game, quintessential frustrating Badger. Clearly he's a two-sport athlete. He brings some of that football mentality to the game. Just a tough guy. We handled it pretty well, but again, it's pretty frustrating to watch a guy like Brad Davidson in the red and white.
These are all college kids, and it's, they're just kids out there playing. But it is a lot easier for me to strongly dislike Wisconsin players. Picking up with no slack after Nigel Hayes left the program, who, I don't know who could like Nigel Hayes, but of course Badger fans are all over him. But Ethan Happ and Davison, I think they are certainly the next generation of Badger players that are going to piss me off for the next 4 or 3 years.
Well, and I don't think any of us should have to feel bad about really talking smack to Badgers fans, because if you ever gone on the Journal Sentinel comments pages about Marquette articles, and there's friggin' Badger trolls on there with the most ignorant basketball commentary. And it's God, I can't wait till we pound you in the Kohl Center. And that's what we did. So
it feels so good.
So I hope those basement dwellers who hop on the basketball boards this year, I hope you have a great rest of the basketball season.
Enjoy Tyler Hero as well.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, shoot. Wait, did he change his mind?
He wanted to go to a real basketball school.
And whose bench was Joey Hauser sitting behind? Was it Wisconsin's bench or was it Marquette's bench?
Oh, I don't know. Wait,
I think he was right behind Wojo, so I think we're good there.
Maybe there's been a changing of the guard.
I'm a big fan of just general self-awareness, and so I do want to acknowledge that Andrew Rousey is one of those. I got a few texts from some Wisconsin friends during the game, and they were like, I would love to kick Andrew Rousey in the shins or somewhere else. Pick your area. So Andrew Rousey we talked a little bit about this earlier in the season. I've sensed that Rousey's been in, not a funk, but he's been a little more chippy recently. And Mohan, you had an interesting theory about this, so I'd be curious as to your thoughts. But one, opposing teams don't like Andrew Rousey. That makes me love Andrew Rousey anymore. I don't like it when he gets into technicals and it hurts us, but the attitude that he's bringing is really evident right through the TV screen.
I don't know if I'll share my theory on the air. It's kind of ignorant and shallow. But if you just look at Rousey's box score, though, I mean, other than the foul trouble he had, he was 6 for 9 from the field, 5 of 6 from 3, and perfect from the line on 7 attempts. When he's out there, he's an efficient player. It's just sometimes he's a little distracted by the ref's calls, or maybe if he gets a pump fake up that he doesn't get the call on, he can get distracted from the game and come down and maybe reach a little bit on defense. And he can't do that. Now, I think maybe one interesting parallel we can draw here is last year, Caton, he kind of had a slow start with us, and we're all like, this guy is selfish, and he's not a team player, he's an ISO player. And I'm not saying that we think those things about Rousey, but Caton, I think, really kind of matured as a senior, and now he's someone we're like, oh man, I wish we had that wing player Caton on the roster. And I think that Rousey, hopefully we see that from him, where he kind of gets these glitches out of the way early in the season where he's struggling with fouls or keeping his head in the game, that by the time Big East season rolls around and hopefully the NCAA tournament, that he has his head screwed on straight and he realizes that the clock is ticking on his basketball career and he better put up or shut up, because there's only so many games that he's going to have left in college. So
right.
Hopefully we see that maturation from him.
Rousey, I feel like part of this obviously is a big negative, but part of it's a huge positive, and part of who Rousey is, the emotional nature of his game. It sort of feeds into that chip on the shoulder mentality that actually seems to drive and motivate Andrew Rousey in a way that I think Wojo probably, in some way identifies with, which is really interesting. So the booing, the being the hated player, the put on Rousey.
Interesting.
The first half, obviously not great. In games that are closer, that's a really tough thing to deal with, and something that's probably not going to be as easily, redeemable from. But Rousey came back in after the first and hit some big shots, had a nice 3, had a hashtag the thing immediately after Hap pulled the game within 10, and really started showing some poise and experience and reacted to the hate he was receiving from the crowd. He scored 11 in a row for Marquette
in
the first 5 of the second half, which was absurd. And at 10 minutes in, he hit another big 3 to tally 18 in the second half. At that point, he was scoring the entire Badger team 18-14.
Yep.
So I don't know if there's anyone better at manufacturing the chip on the shoulder and then harnessing the chip on the shoulder. He does both. It's not always going to be a positive, but today it was good.
So I just got a text from our brother in potting, Brian Henry, and he wanted to make sure we reiterate that it cannot be overstated how bad Wisconsin is. So I think we've said that throughout. That doesn't take away from Marquette's win. We beat them by almost 20 on the road.
No, it's okay. Let Brian do his thing and minimize our success.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, look, it is a bad team, so don't get overhyped thinking this is a huge win. It's a great win. We always want to beat our rivals, and we should be proud of that. But don't think this is going to mean shit against Xavier or when we play in the Big East.
Yeah, but to some degree, screw that.
Yeah,
it's a limited bad Badger team. The Kohl Center is still an extremely tough place to play, and they have one of the best players in the country in Ethan Happ. I think to minimize it to that level and think that these guys weren't up and on their feet for the 100th anniversary of this game is ridiculous. But hearing the announcers in the first half really minimize the rivalry from the UW side was absurd to me.
Yeah.
I think they came back from a commercial break and some producer probably said, walk that back, because they walked it back. It's a hardcore rivalry. These Wisconsin basketball players don't give a shit about, Wisconsin having rivalries in football. This is still a big game for them.
Yep.
To minimize it to that degree is ridiculous to me.
The teams that are bad, you want to beat them like they're bad, and you want to put them away, and that's exactly what Marquette did. We only have just a few minutes left here, and there are a few other positives that I want to cover. I kind of want to touch on a couple of different points of the roster, and something we've seen over the last few games. Maybe we can just each quickly weigh in on these. Theo John has looked like he's gotten more comfortable, hasn't had a ton of offensive production, but he has shown some post moves in the past couple of games against Vermont and Wisconsin, which I think are intriguing. Yes, we have Harry Froling coming, but what did y'all see either of those? And am I overreacting to the fact that Theo may be able to offer 6 points, 8 points at some point in this season?
Well, I think it's nice that we can get a rebound out of Cam Murata against Wisconsin every time we play.
Tally that in the win category. Yeah, no, that's a win for sure.
I think the freshmen have looked good. I mean, the fact that they don't have to go out of their way to really assert themselves on this team is a good thing. The fact that we have 3 polished scorers already really takes a lot of the offensive strain off of those guys, and it really allows them to lock down on defense. And they always look focused. They always, it looks like Wojo's got some good fundamentals put into them, and it looks like John, who only had 1 foul today, starting to get more comfortable out there and harness his activity level. So I think the good positive steps by the freshman.
And Mohan, that foul is a foul I think probably a lot of big guys across the country would have made today on a really pretty reverse by Happ in the second half. It was it was where you see Happ being, a potentially nationally prominent player posting up and hurting an inexperienced young freshman. But other than that, there were a lot of bright spots in this game for Theo. Huge block at one point.
Yep.
Some offensive upside showing. Mm-hmm. I was encouraged by Theo today.
Yeah. I thought Greg Elliott had a decent game. The stat line won't show it. But I think this was a game, I've gotten used to Greg Elliott a little bit more, having kind of that game where you notice him, not necessarily with points, but today against Wisconsin, it was Jamal Cain who had 2 rebounds, an assist, a steal, and a block. I think he had a couple I thought he had 2 steals off inbounds, or he broke up a couple passes at least off inbounds. I cannot overstate how much the fact that I love that Cain, Elliott, and John have found a way to influence the game, influence the stat sheet without needing to be scorers. That is so critical for this Marquette team going forward. The fact that they've been able to do that, and granted, we haven't played the toughest schedule, but we have played a pretty goddamn tough schedule. So the fact that they've been able to do that is so promising for the rest of this year and for the future.
And I think that's where the impact of Wojo's coaching comes into play, because that was his calling card, is making a major impact on the game without putting it on the score sheet. And there's been a lot of hemming and hawing about Wojo's inability to put a defense out there, but his coaching on an individual basis, I think we've seen good individual growth from all of these guys on the roster, and I think a rising tide lifts all boats. So
except Tony Cheatham.
Well, he has molted off of this team's exoskeleton. But I just want to say one more thing about the fouls. And the fact that, we kind of struggled against big teams earlier in the year, and that was something we were maybe concerned about going against Wisconsin, is Hap and their front court giving us foul trouble, and Helt and John combined for 3 total personal fouls. So great job by our centers staying in the game, not letting Hap or these other guys put them on the bench and getting us in trouble.
The fouls were disproportionately called on Marquette. That's certainly, again, another negative to this game.
Well, they had to keep it from losing by 30.
Yeah, those hometown refs, they have a way to do that. But we also made up for it with a big discrepancy in turnovers. I don't know what it was at the end of the game, but we did a decent job taking care of the ball, and there was
ended up 12-9. Wisconsin had more, but still respectable. I mean, not many teams win the turnover battle against Wisconsin in general.
So, fellas, I think we're ready to wrap up here. I want to toss it to either of you for any final thoughts. Marquette actually now has more than a week off, so we don't next play until Monday, December 18th, and that's a home game against Northern Illinois. Then we only have one more game against American until we start the Big East Conference season 2 days after Christmas against Xavier in Milwaukee. So the non-con quickly coming to a close here. So, Eric, Pete, I know you both mentioned that this is a solid non-con performance from Marquette. What are you going to take from this Wisconsin game and going forward as we get closer to Big East play? What are you looking for? Thoughts, reactions?
Mike, I think it's all positives coming out of this game. It's a successful non-con slate. I think we can really determine that after this game, that this has been a positive from the first game of the year till now, and that we have some momentum rolling into the Big East schedule, which is excellent. That's what we need. I think we can also take a step back, hopefully, and this is going to be repeated again and again this year, and it's been harped on for the last year, but I think we really need to savor this, gents. These 2 shooters on one Marquette team, they're perhaps the 2 best shooting guards on one team we or anyone in the country has ever had in the history of a program. And I don't think that's hyperbole. Walk me back if that is. But these guys are superlative, and I'm really excited to watch them through the rest of the year excel. I'm also excited to really watch these freshmen throughout the year take a bigger role. These guys we've already talked about today, figure out who our third scorer really is, or to see Hauser really own that and take over more going into the Big East slate and to get a little more involved. Other than that, got some junk drawer stuff to throw out there, if you'll allow me. Really interesting. Had Wisconsin not started Pritzl this morning, it would have been the first time since the 90s they hadn't had a Wisconsin native in the starting lineup versus Marquette.
Wow.
So anyone who says the Badgers are more a Wisconsin team or the state's team than Marquette, they can go read that stat and enjoy that. Also, throw it out there, if Howard's profile is going to be elevated to a more prominent recognition nationally for his excellent play of late, does he need a new hairdo? I want to throw that out there. And, yes, no. Ooh. Are you here for Howard's hair? So throw that out on Twitter for the Twitter gang on the Real Chili podcast here.
Mohan?
I think that I would want to echo your praise about us cherishing these 2 shooters, but I think that we have to mention Hauser in that group as it being a trio, essentially, as he entered the game as our best 3-point shooter at 44%. And then went and hit 4 out of 5, I believe, today. So he's going to be touching 50% soon. So maybe the statement is this is the best trio of 3-point shooters ever to be on any program.
That might be.
That's fair. That is fair. I'm here for that.
I'm going to disagree on the hair thing, but as far as
hey, I threw it out there as a question.
Yeah, he's got a good canvas though, so maybe there is something better out there. Who knows?
I'm trying to get a Twitter debate here. Let's throw that out for the Real Chili clan. Yeah.
Well, my big takeaway is just another big picture thing about the non-conference, and that we had one true away game this year.
Yeah.
Which is huge for the RPI, and we crushed Wisconsin. And then in our 3 neutral court games, we went 2 out of 3, with our only loss being to Wichita State. So the committee, I think, will look very favorably on that performance. The fact that we went 3-1 in away and neutral games in our non-conference. And, looks like if we can beat the next 2 teams, we'll be 9-3 heading into Xavier. So in the Big East, there will be plenty of opportunities to play big games and get big wins. Hopefully, we're ready to go against Xavier, and I'm really excited to see Froling in these next couple games. I don't know about you guys, but he's going to be eligible for Northern Illinois, right?
Yep, that's right. So this was the last game Marquette's going to play, hopefully for the next 3 years, without Harry Froling. Looking back at this game, looking back at the non-con, I think we answered a lot of questions. We know what our offense is. We know what it can be, and it's really starting to click now. I think it's a great win against Wisconsin. Love that we put those put the Badgers down. Put them
dagger.
That dagger. Put them out of their misery at the Kohl Center. That's so sweet to me. I love that. But our defense is still a major liability, and that doesn't go away. So don't kid yourselves. Marquette is not a top-tier team in the Big East, and I say this as a huge fan of Marquette. We're not a top-tier team in the Big East. Marquette is going to have a lot of challenges, and there are still strides this defense needs to take. We have the offense to compete with anybody. What can the defense do? How does Harry Froling play into that? What does his offense look like? It's going to be fun to see how Froling fits in and how these freshmen continue to grow. A lot to be excited about.
And with the talent we're adding next year, there is 0 chance Wisconsin beats us next year.
Milwaukee.
Put that in the books now.
I was serious about that. 10 in a row. We're going to tie this rivalry, gentlemen.
All right, fellas. That's going to do it for us here at the Real Chili Podcast. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening. Again, we're going to be coming to you more frequently from now on. It's been a crazy few weeks for all of us in our personal and professional lives, but we're locked in and ready to go once we get into the Big East season. So thanks again for listening. I'm Mike Lavender signing off for Eric Pond and Pete Mohan. We'll talk to you next time here on the Real Chili Podcast.